Shalom, shalom. I'm gonna get into this video. This is a real heavy video. I don't know who this brother is, but he kind of go off time to time in the video, but it's pretty accurate. You know what I'm saying? He going into how the earth is given into the hands of the wicked would be the so-called white man. This would be his dominion, his rulership. Right? We coming to the end of it, right? And Yahweh Bashim Yahushua would show us how this devil was able to put this together, right? So I'm gonna get into this video. I might interject here and there, but I'm gonna let most of it play through. All right.
For centuries, people have been speaking of the elite, the so-called rulers of the world. In today's terms, the 1%. These families have managed to shape and impact each and every nation around the globe, and in turn everyone's life. They are believed to be responsible for the atrocities of the world, directly or indirectly, whether by funding or direct involvement. Over the years, it has been said that they created colonialism. It is alleged they were front and center in China's opium trade. By 1840, there were 10 million Chinese opium addicts, largely sustained by illegal British imports. They took part in the African slave trade. They owned and ran the ships that transported Africans around the globe.
Salaki, let me interject right there. But we're not Africans. That's another mainstream lie. That so-called Africans sold Africans. No, they sold Hebrew Israelites into captivity. And that's going back into the book of Deuteronomy prophecy. Right? But that's another lie they like to say. It's Africans sold Africans. And I'll do a whole nother lesson about that, but get back into this.
They were the founders and supporters of many movements and organizations. They were behind the many secrets of the CIA through the Bush family, led by George H.W. Bush. They started wars and rumors of wars around the world. In some cases, they funded both sides of the war. The families own or run the media houses, academia, the food industry, the music fraternities, and the health organizations, all working hand in hand, only focused where the money leads them. They run all the world affairs through control of currency and central banks across the globe, and have managed to infiltrate all nations, including the USA and England. These families are draining the resources of the earth dry, and have somehow tricked us into believing that their paper currency have value, when in fact it has none. They use paper currency to obtain the real values of the earth. The question is, who are they? The families and their associates. The great net of intermarried Jewish banking names goes as follows: the Warburgs, the Rothschilds, Oppenheim, Mendelssohn, Skiff, Loeb, and less famous but more important ones, such as David.
So, like, it is going to be my last time interrupting. But they call themselves Jewish, all right, which that's a whole nother lesson within itself. Great level of confusion on these people, right? They don't know what's going on. But these Jewish people are Edomites, right? They relabeled themselves as so-called Jewish, right? They Edomites from the seed of Amalek and other Edomite families.
Weem of Lazard Ferrez, which had their origins in the Venetian absorption of Sephardic Jewish banking families. So now you know who they are. The families are the major family names that run all the world affairs. Now let's take a look at the family early beginnings, connections, and marriages. It all started with Anselmo and Abraham Levi Kahana de Palenzuela. Both founded and started Banca Palenzuela Levi Kahana Investment Bank in Spain. It is said that their ancestors were originally a Hebrew family from Africa/Middle East and journeyed to Europe in the beginning of the 11th century, which there is no evidence to support. If their ancestors came from Palestine to Spain in the beginning of the 11th century, then surely their ancestors would be black. If their ancestors were not from Palestine, it is most likely that they became or converted to Jewish Sephardics, which many whites did in that time. Anselmo and Abraham were later chased out of Spain in the late 1400s. The family then moved to Bologna, Italy, where they changed their name to Del Banco. They stayed in Italy for some years, but eventually moved due to various restrictions placed on Jews, including banking. So they moved to Warburg, Germany, and changed their name once more to Warburg. In Germany, they were known as a Venetian Jewish banking family, and if not the wealthiest, were one of the wealthiest in Europe. They later established themselves in Altona near Hamburg in the 17th century and started M.M. Warburg & Co. in 1798, founded by Moses Marcus Warburg and his brother Gerson Warburg. So the founding fathers of Levi Kahana de Palenzuela were Anselmo and his brother Abraham, who were chased out of Spain in 1492. They changed their names to Del Banco while in Italy, and later changed their names again to Warburg after arriving in Germany. Their descendants established themselves in Altona near Hamburg. So in the 1600s, Moses and Gerson, two brothers, started the first bank in the name Warburg in Germany. Then you had Rosa Warburg, who was married to Paul Schiff, director of Credit and Salt of Vienna. You had George Gabriel Warburg and his son Sigmund George Warburg, who founded S.G. Warburg & Co. in London in the 19th century. Then there was Max M. Warburg, a banker, and his son Eric M. Warburg, founders of Warburg Pincus. Warburg Pincus is a global equity firm that is headquartered in New York City. Then there was Paul M. Warburg from 1868 to 1932, father of the Federal Reserve. In 1910, there was a secret meeting, and in attendance was Paul M. Warburg, Nelson Aldrich, Piet Andrew, Henry Davison, Arthur Shelton, and Frank Vanderlip, where they secretly discussed and wrote and planned their next move. And in 1913, the Federal Reserve was established. Then you had James Warburg, 1897 to 1969, economist, banker, and advisor to Franklin D. Roosevelt. You have Felix M. Warburg, a New York banker with Kuhn Loeb & Co. Then last but not least was Carola Warburg from 1896 to 1987, who was married to Walter N. Rothschild, son of Simon F. Rothschild. The Rothschilds has managed to marry into the Warburg family and have become the most popular and possibly the wealthiest family of them all. In this portrait, you have Walter N. Rothschild on a horse and buggy, in this case, a zebra and buggy. It has been rumored that the Rothschilds were originally Warburgs and later changed their names to Rothschilds, which there is no evidence to support this. But if this is correct, then that would mean that Walter N. Rothschild got married to his relative Carola Warburg Rothschild, which isn't strange, seeing that the family had consanguinity in the past. Now let's take a look at the families, their American partners and associates. The family branched out. Felix and Paul emigrated to the United States, where Felix married Frida Skiff, financier of America's railroads and partner to the Harriman family of the Union Pacific Railroad. In 1913, it was Paul Warburg who penned the Federal Reserve Act, an unconstitutional measure opposed by several presidents in the past, which puts America's economy under the control of the European banks, run by the Rothschild, Skiff, Loeb, Kuhn, and Warburg families, who are still in control of the Federal Reserve. So we were warned before our present-day predicament by several leaders in the past, such as Abraham Lincoln, John F. Kennedy, Castro, Michael Manley, and others. Now, here we have the portraits of Abraham Lincoln minutes before the murderous attack that claimed his life. He was assassinated by the actor John Wilkes Booth in Washington, D.C. at the Ford's Theater. Circled in red atop the balcony is said to be John Wilkes Booth, and below is said to be Abraham Lincoln and his associates. So in 1914, Paul Warburg took over as first Federal Reserve Chairman. War started in Europe months later, and America began their involvement in European affairs. It was the Schiff family under Jacob Schiff that financed Japan in the war against Russia in 1905, called the Japanese-Russo War. So Japan received funds in the Japanese-Russo Wars from 1904 to 1905, in which they were victorious over the Russians. They later allied with England during 1911 to 1912 in the occupation of China, where we saw the fall of the great Mongol Shin dynasty. What is interesting is that these families, the Loebs, the Kunz, Warburgs, the Rothschilds, and the Schiff family and their American partners, the Harriman family, have dominated American finance and foreign policies for over 100 years. In 1926, Harriman brought Prescott Bush into the Brown Brothers/Harriman partnership with the London banking group, where he joined George Herbert Walker in establishing what Webster Tarpley coined the Hitler Project, which can be found in his unauthorized biography of George H.W. Bush in 1942. The assets of several Americans were seized for their support for Hitler. Among them was Senator Prescott Bush, father of George H.W. Bush. In this portrait, you have the Sheriff family and their associates. Sheriff was the original family name of the Bushes before changing their name to Bush after migrating to the U.S. On the far left is Mother Sheriff. Holding her hand is Martin Bormann. In front is Reinhard Gehlen. In the extreme back is Joseph Mengele. At center left, in the German Navy uniform, is George H. Bush Jr. Just to his left is George H. Sr. Now, Martin Bormann was a German Nazi official and was head of the Nazis' chancellery. Reinhard Gehlen was a lieutenant general and intelligence officer for the SS, and Otto Skorzeny was said to be Hitler's favorite soldier and Germany's top commander in World War II. All were smuggled out of Germany under Operation Paperclip. So Tarpley's extensive work on the Bush family history outlined the banking relationships that led to the rise and fall of Hitler, the same banks that made up Warburg's Federal Reserve. China's Opium Wars. The Opium Wars